Chapter 11 of The Great Divorce. Beautiful day in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Let's dive in to the text because it is awesome. Title of this lecture, kind of the theme I want to really hone in on with chapter 11 is that we need to choose the reality and not the reflection. So similar to what we talked about second half of chapter 9, what does it look like to choose the reality and not be content with the reflection? To pursue the light and not be content with the kaleidoscope and the little glimpses that we see. So chapter 11, we see two ghosts. We get one who's called Pam, and we have another ghost who's a lizard ghost. I couldn't find a good kaleidoscope, got that in my mind. I couldn't find a good silhouette of a ghost with an actual lizard on his shoulder, so I just did it like a bag. Pam is in heaven. She's talking to her brother. Pam is, in heaven, but she's a ghost. She's talking to her brother, who's a solid spirit, and she wants to see her son. Her son is named Michael. And Michael is also in the high countries, but he's not there at the bus stop meeting her. And so here's kind of the basis of the conversation between Pam and her brother. Pam is this mother, and like most mothers who love their kids, she shows up and she says, "Hey, I want to see my son." She says, "Let me see my son. Where is Michael? Where's Michael? I want to see him." And her brother, the solid spirit, tells her that she will be able to see her son. But he says, first, you have to grow solid. He says, "You're transparent. You're such a ghost that Michael can't even see you." He says, "Michael can't even see you." And he says, "You will become solid enough for Michael to see you when you learn to want someone else besides Michael." Obviously, that someone else is the person of Jesus. But he says the first stage for you to become solid is that you need to learn to shift your desire from the reflection to the reality. Instead of desiring to see your son, someone who is a reflection of the image of God, right? A person made in the image of God, just like all of us. Instead of desiring the reflection, you need to desire the reality. Instead of desiring the kaleidoscope, you need to desire the light. And he says, then once your desires have been shifted accordingly, then you will be able to grow solid and to finally see your son. And she takes it wrong, right? She's like, "You're telling me that it's a sin to want to see my son?" She says, "You can't tell me that a mother wanting to see her son is wrong, right? Motherly love is one of the holiest things I can think of." She's like, "You can't tell me that it's wrong for me to want to see my dead son." But the response she gets really ties into the idea of wanting the reflection instead of the reality. The solid spirit says, well, it's not wrong for you to want to see your son. He says, in fact, on page 100, no natural feelings are high or low, holy or unholy in themselves. It's not wrong for you to want to see your son. He says, but these feelings are holy when God's hand is on the rein. They go bad when they set up their own and make themselves false gods. Right? So no, your desire to see your son is not a bad thing, right? Just like our desires to do whatever it is we want to do, right? Whatever you love to do is not, in and of itself, is not a bad thing. However, who is steering that ship, right? If her desire is to see her son for selfish motives, right? Because she wants to be the mother, she feels ownership over him. Maybe like Robert's wife, she wants to have some kind of control. Then that becomes a perverted desire. When the desire is for God, right? And she wants to see her son as a means of worshiping, right? As a means of worshiping the reality instead of the reflection. That's a pure desire. And so what he tells her is, he says, no, it's not wrong for you to want to see your son. What's wrong is that you want to see your son instead of seeing God. What's wrong is that you're content with this perverted image, right? This person, this reflection, rather than pursuing the reality. So he says, your desire has been perverted. Step one is you have to want to see God before you want to see your son. And her response is basically like, okay, how do I do that? Let's do this quickly because I'm ready to roll. Which clearly shows that she doesn't actually want to see God. She just wants to see Michael. And she's like, okay, if I have to do this, I'll do it. And so she mistakes the means for the end. So she says, how can I see him? And the ghost replies on page 99, and I took it out of order, but the context is essentially the same. He says, the whole thickening process of becoming solid consists in learning to want God for his own sake. Right? He says, God is the end goal. The means should not be mistaken for the end. Right? You shouldn't ask a question just to ask a question. You should want an answer. You shouldn't go on a trip just to go on a trip. You should go to arrive somewhere. Because you need to learn to want God himself, and then you'll be able to see your son. And she doesn't necessarily agree, right? And we don't see the end of that picture or that confrontation of whether she understands that her relationship with her son will be that much fuller and that much more whole when it's put in its proper place. There's something she doesn't want to give up. Better to reign in hell than serve in heaven. And so a good takeaway from this first half of the chapter is that every natural love will rise again and live forever in this country, but none will rise again until it has been buried. Another way of saying that is her mother love is a great thing, and it will continue when she gets to heaven, right, with her son Michael. But until she buries it, until she puts it in its proper place and learns to desire God above everything else, that mother love is festering, right? That desire is corrupted. And that flows well into the next ghost, the ghost with the lizard. He has this lizard on his shoulder. George MacDonald and C.S. Lewis walk on, and they see this other interaction. There's a guy with a lizard. And the lizard's whispering to him. And we don't really hear what it's saying until later in the chapter. But the lizard's talking to him, and the ghost decides he's going back to the bus stop. He's going back to hell. He's pretty embarrassed. He's like, oh, I'm embarrassed. I told him that we could come to heaven if he would be quiet, but he's not being quiet, right? He's in my ear. He's talking. And the solid spirit, and so he basically says to the solid spirit, he says, well, I'll stay if I can keep this. Right? Let me just keep this and I'll stay. We don't know exactly what it is. We do at the end of the chapter, but initially we don't know for sure, but it reminds me of that image of like the devil and the angel on the shoulder, right? You have this little corrupted red lizard, a serpent, if you will, who is just whispering in his ear. And the solid spirit answers and says, well, you can't do that because heaven and hell are a great divorce, right? You can't have the little smallest bit of heaven in hell. You can't have the smallest bit of hell if you want to stay in heaven. And so he asks very simply something that he'll repeat again and again in this chapter. He says, may I kill it? He says, you have this demon on your shoulder, this sin pattern, this thing that you struggle with that annoys you and you're embarrassed of it and you don't want people to see it, like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Let me kill it. That's the only way. Let me kill it. And he responds and he goes, well, no, if you do that, it's going to kill me, right? If you kill this part of me, it will destroy me. It's like Jekyll saying, if you kill Hyde, it's going to kill me because they're both me. And that's his perspective right now. He says, if you do that, it's going to kill me. You can't kill it. And he continues to say, may I kill it? May I kill it? May I kill it? And he also says this, I think this is just really beautiful. He says, I never said it wouldn't hurt you, but I said it wouldn't kill you. But I can't do it against your will. He goes, trust me, I can kill this sin pattern, right? I can break the neck of this pornography addiction, this drug addiction, this whatever it is, and it's going to hurt you, right? Reality is harsh to the feet of ghosts. It's going to hurt, but I can promise you it won't kill you. And he says, but I can't do it against your will. You have to willingly give up whatever this thing is that you're struggling with. For Jekyll, he needs to willingly give up Hyde. And he says it's going to hurt, but it won't kill you. And then we have the lizard jumps in, and he starts redefining reality, right? That's what evil's good at. It's good at twisting the truth. We talked about that with Macbeth, right? Beware of twisted truth. And the lizard starts saying, it's going to kill you, right? If he kills me, it'll kill you. You need me, right? I complete you. Your sexual desires, right? Without those, you're nothing. Your desire to be loved, if you give that up, you're nothing, right? He goes, I may just be a reflection of the reality. And he knows that. That's what I think is so great is the lizard says, I may be just like a dream, because even evil knows the truth. He says, I may be just a reflection of the reality, but at least you have me. At least you have this reflection, right? You need me. You need me. You need me. But finally, he says, kill it. Because I can't do this anymore. You've ruined my life. And it resonates with me because there's always something that you and I struggle with, right? A part of us that we want hidden, that we can't get rid of, though, right? A sin pattern, a struggle that says, hey, you need me. Without me, you're nothing, right? What would your life look like if you didn't have this to fall back on? What would your life look like if you gave this up, right? You need me. But he finally says, kill it. The ghost grabs it, the solid spirit, I keep messing this up. Solid spirit grabs it, breaks its neck, throws it on the ground. And then this crazy scene happens. The ghost begins to harden. He begins to become a solid person. And the lizard becomes a horse. And the solid person gets on the lizard and rides it out into the backcountry. And what's going on here with the horse? And this is extremely important. He says this at the end of chapter 11. He says, nothing, not even the best and noblest, can go as it is now. So nothing can get into heaven as it is now. No reflection is good enough to be the light. Very similar to this quote, right? That her love for her son is not good enough until it becomes a love first for God. So he says, nothing, not even the best and noblest, can go as it is now. Nothing, not even what is lowest and most bestial, will not be raised again, resurrected, if it submits to death. And so we get a really cool scene where this thing, which we find out is his lust, right? That he struggles with this sin pattern of lust. It could be pornography. It could just be mental lust, just looking at people. We don't really know, right? But this thing says, you need me. You need me. And when he finally says, you know what? I don't. You're a perverted version of something good. He kills it. And that lust resurrects into something greater, right? Into this stallion. This little corrupted, slithery lizard of his lust becomes this full-grown, beautiful horse of love, right? Love, a good thing. Something that was meant to be that has been perverted into lust. Another way of looking at it would be if it was greed, right? Let's say this little lizard is his greed and it's always in his ear and he's a greedy person. You kill that greed, it becomes desire in heaven, right? A desire to worship, a desire to be one with God, which is a good thing. Greed is that perverted version, is that reflected version. Anger, right, becomes a righteous anger against the things that are wrong. For Pam, at the beginning of the chapter, her mother love, her love for her son Michael, which is a corrupted, slithery thing in and of itself, is broken and becomes a love of God, right? And so everything, even what is lowest and most bestial, must be submitted to death if it wants to be raised again. And it makes me think again of the hero's journey. If you want the treasure, if you want the new life, the new status quo, you have to descend into the pit. And that's where Jesus again and again says that we have to submit to death, that we have to be born again, that we have to put to death ourselves, our desires, and the things that have become corrupted because we've mistaken the means for the end. But they will be resurrected if we are willing to do that. And so I want to add a couple themes to close for today. Do not be content with the reflection over the reality. Right? That's easy to say because what we see right now is reflections. But don't be content with that. To go back to this picture, don't look at that reflection and jump in and drown, right? Instead, say, wow, that's beautiful. I'm going to go find the mountains. See the good things that God has made. See his image in people. See his love. See his beauty. But don't be content with the things themselves. Don't be content with lust instead of love. Don't be content with with greed instead of desire for holiness. Don't be content with the reflection over the reality. And the beauty here is that the reality includes infinitely more than anything that the reflections offer, right? So really, you're not giving up anything. It feels like that, but you're getting so much more. And then like the hero's journey, whatever it is, including your own life, put it to death that it may live, right? To get the treasure, you have to go through the dragon. To be born again, there has to take place a death, right? A spiritual death. So put it to death that it may live.